Hello, my name is Sylvain Rochon. This is another episode in writing my second book, Engineering Paradise. I'm still working on a second title for it. And this week, what I want to talk about is the role of government. Now, I've always been a big fan of decentralization, and there's a lot of tools, especially with the emergence of blockchain, of course, the presence of the internet, and a lot of different efforts in doing peer-to-peer software. So essentially just computers talking with each other, and everybody has a computer now. Well, a lot of people have the computer like in their smartphones, for example, and they also have a laptop and have other devices that are computerized and also connected to the internet. So it allows us to innovatively create different ways for the population to communicate with itself and get organized as a nation without the need for a centralized government. However, there is a number of things that even now, even in the short term, would still be it would still be advantageous to have a centralized system to oversee the services or the distribution of basic needs, for example, to a population from a centralized entity of sorts. And there's a bunch, and some would be you don't need anymore, like based on what we currently have, for example. But those that I think we would actually need would be, we still need some kind of a lawmaking entity. We still need an entity to take care of and monitor the delivery of education to, there's a little bit of a, I don't like to conform with anything, but to keep levels of education on par with the rest of the world, for example, and oversee the development of new educational techniques and so on and so forth. I think it's important to have an entity for that. Health, security, the judiciary, infrastructure, which is in Canada we usually just call it public works, same thing. Economy and trade, foreign affairs, and citizenry and immigration. These are all ministries, I would call them ministries, at least for now, that I think I've identified that are needed on a national level that can't be fully decentralized, at least not right now. The future, anything is possible. And we can start decentralizing as much as we can, as we figure out a good way to do it without, while keeping equality, while keeping every right of every citizen intact. And so as we figure things out, how to decentralize and give the power to the people in a distributed fashion, we'll still need some of those entities. So these would be organized in governance units, if you will, and none of these ministries are more powerful than the other. They are all functional entities that are meant to be by the people, for the people in a real way. Now, a lot of people remember, like when we founded most of the modern nations that are not dictatorial, for example, so republics, democracies, and even communist countries, in their early beginnings, they were definitely set up as ideas by the people, for the people in different ways. If you look at history, even in Russia, I mean, the Bolsheviks, when they did the revolution against the Tsar at the time, well, they were fed up with monarchy, and they wanted to have something that would allow people to live well, following a little bit Karl Marx's ideas of socialism. It was a great idea. It ended up being converted or perverted, just like democracies and republics of today. They are perverted versions of their original ideologies for different reasons, based on different stories around the world. And I know some of you probably don't agree with me, but I don't want to elaborate. Different nations have different truths. Some nations are actually fairly good democracies and fairly uncorrupt and unbiased. Others are generally controlled by powerful people that have money. In general, most of the corruption goes to, most of these systems, I should say, end up being oligarchies and plutarchies. I can't say the word. Well, the oligarchs and the plutarchs would be, so people with money or religion end up controlling the government, and that creates a lot of problems. This is true in the Muslim world, in Asia, in North America, South America, and Europe. You end up ultimately with a select amount of people that decide the fate of the rest of the people, usually to the detriment of the people that have the least amount of power, right? So that creates usually a power gap, creates a wealth gap, creates a knowledge gap. Some people are suppressed while others are put up, and their ideas are implemented, and it's a biased system. Even though, as an ideology, if you look at democracy, it was put up mostly in place to avoid having autocrats in power, having people that would have full executive power over the whole nation. Because then you have people that can essentially, after 4 or 5 years, whatever the term is, it could displace the undesirable element and vote somebody else in. The issue, and this is supported by research, and it's listed in the article that I posted. It's going to be in the book as well. Research shows that if you put up some candidates, whether they're put up or they self-candidate, if that's a word, the general population that have no significant knowledge about or expertise about what's really happening, and whether it's politics, economy, or whatever it is, usually the results are slightly above average as far as selection of the candidate. But the goal is to select the highest quality candidate that will take care of the people on their behalf, right? So that's the ultimate goal. That's why we set up democracy in the first place, or a republic, or whatever it is. The people want to have their basic needs met. They want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. They want good decisions to be made. They want the economy to grow and all this good stuff, right? Maybe the planet survives thanks to a good leader. But democracy, the way if everybody votes, you don't get, on average, you don't get that ideal result. What you get is slightly better than mediocre. You avoid the problem of why democracies became popular in the first place. You generally avoid having a bad element being voted in. And the research shows actually that exactly that. Like, historically, if you look at all the data, most votes for presidents or prime ministers, you avoid the bad apple. But you also, it's really hard to get the good one, because people, again, this is according to scientific research, people cannot distinguish who's good, better, or best in a certain field unless they are themselves knowledgeable in that specific field. So it's a little bit like, using this as an example, like you try to select the best engineer, like a civil engineer that makes bridges, as an example. Or let's use another example, a hockey player. Who's the best hockey player, like in a tryout? Like you have 30 guys on the ice or on the baseball field, whatever sport you want to choose. Well, who's the best one? And you have a week, and by observing, but the people that are setting up, and you do that by votes, and in the population, you have half the people that hardly play or watch baseball at all, or the sport, or don't know anything about it, and you have the other half that have different levels of knowledge of said sports. And you have maybe 5 or 10% of the population that are hardcore, they know everything about it, they're players themselves. Well, that subset, that high expertise or skilled subset of baseball would be able to identify the better candidates on the field way, way, way better than anybody else, especially those that know nothing, because they, and this, again, this is from research, from studies, we are quite incapable of identifying, the difference between good and the best in a field, if you don't have the immediate knowledge. So what we can do is, democracy is great, but we can do better. we can set up a system where the highest quality person is put in place, and quality is not determined by the person that's the better speaker. Is determined on what he's actually supposed to be doing, and does he have the proper skills to do that. So if you want the best baseball player, well, you need the best baseball player, not the person that's able to describe baseball the better, or able to appeal to a population using his words a lot better than others, or the candidate that has the better funders, that's able to do better marketing. That's no good. That is not good. So, but if you ask people that are peers of a candidate to decide if he's good or bad, they'll be able to rate this person. So I'm recommending something quite different, something that would allow us to get the highest quality candidate, but also at the same time avoid the corruption that we sometimes see. So in this particular system, what I'm suggesting is each ministry, each of those entities that I mentioned before, education, citizenry, immigration, lawmaking, they each need a leader to kind of take decisions, because organizations need leadership to take final decisions on things. Well, let these individuals be set up as candidates by artificial intelligence, okay? And let them be not campaign, let's say, to become candidates. That's really important. And I'll get to this in the next video, which is going to be a little bit next week, but we need a system. Again, we need the highest quality person. That also means you don't want somebody that has self-interest in being in that position either, because that creates a situation where the person will take decisions that may not be for the best interest of the people, but could be for the best interest of himself or herself. They may take decisions that will allow him or her to remain in that position longer, that would serve other interests. Maybe there's some financiers or other people they want to please for whatever reason. We want to avoid as much of these situations as possible. And that way we have better leadership and high quality, unbiased as much as possible, because human nature, everybody's to a certain degree biased, but we want to limit that as much as possible. So the role of government, again, is to take care of the people and make sure they have their basic needs met, and they are served properly by highly qualified individuals that don't have an agenda of their own. And I'm recommending a system with multiple leaders and that are each voted in by their peers, essentially. But I'll explain that further in the next video, because I need time to reflect a little bit more and write a bit more about this. Make sure I get the right references, because I am writing that part as well. You notice next video I'm wearing the same clothes, so I'm getting there a little bit later. So ciao for now.